Shalom, beloveds of the King. Here we are again today, coming together to be able to look at this powerful prophetic book of Yeshayahu, the prophet Isaiah. And as we continue to look at this prophetic utterances that he has spoken, it is absolutely amazing to be able to see how this prophet is able to see our Messiah in so many different ways, in so many of his prophecies that he speaks. There is no prophetic book that speaks as much about our Messiah as Yeshayahu. So truly the Father called him with a message that was to really reveal our Messiah. And so we continue to pray for Brother Yehudah, for Brother Judah, that as they read the book of Yeshayahu, that their eyes will be opened, that their spirits will be opened, and that they may see the one whom they pierced. And so we have now we are entering into the 50s, and exciting to be able to look at these 50s, to be able to see exactly what Isaiah is speaking as he continues to speak about the servant, which we can look at this in a dual way of where we look at it as being many times he's speaking about himself, but then there are other times that he is speaking about very clearly about our Messiah. And so we have a look, and we are going to be able to read from Isaiah 50 verses 1. Thus said Yahuwah, where is the certificate of your mother's divorce, whom I put away? Or which of my creditors is it to whom I have sold you? Look, you were sold for your crookedness, for your crookednesses, and your mother was put away for your transgressions. And so here we see Isaiah is once again now bringing back the sins of the house of Israel, once again proclaiming to them about their sins and how Abba is the one that sent them away. Yet Abba promised to fight for them and to take care of them. But Israel forgot Yahuwah and put their trust and their faith in their allies. They did not trust him and take him at his word. Instead, they rejected him and they rejected his word, and they were putting their trust in allies and in the arm of the flesh. And so once again, Isaiah is going to bring to us the futility once again of putting our trust in ourselves, and what is it going to help us. And so if we go look at Jeremiah chapter 3, in Jeremiah chapter 3 verses 6 to 10, he clearly tells us this of what he's speaking over here. Jeremiah prophesied it, but before Jeremiah prophesied it, Isaiah was already prophesying it, because Isaiah came way before Jeremiah. And Yahuwah said to me in the days of Yeshayahu, the sovereign, have you seen what backsliding Israel has done? She has gone up on every high mountain and under every green tree, and there committed whoring. And after she had done all these, I said, return to me, but she did not return. And her treacherous sister Yehudah saw it. And I saw that for all the causes of which backsliding Israel had committed adultery, I put her away and given her a certificate of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Yehudah did not fear, but went and committed whoring too. And it came to be, through her frivolous whoring, that she defiled the land and committed adultery with stones and wood. And yet for all this, her treacherous sister Yehudah has not turned to me with all her heart, but falsely, declares Yahuwah. So you see here already the Father is bringing to light the fact that there are many people that worship Him with their lips, but with their lifestyles and with their lives, they do not show Him that they trust Him. Because at the end of the day, He says, if you trust me, then you will be able to have faith in me, and then you will. That's why Yeshua speaks and He says, when I come back, will I find faith on the earth? Because we are called to put our faith and our trust in Him and Him alone. But you see, when things get tough, and when the Father doesn't answer our prayers fast enough, do we turn to plan B and plan C? Because then that is putting our trust in the arm of the flesh and in our allies and in the things around us. So you know what? It's easy to read this Bible and to say, oh, that was for Israel and for Judah. That's not for me. No, we commit the same sins that they did, just that it comes in a different form. It comes in a different way. We're not void of the fact that we do the same thing. And so if we have a look at Hosea chapter 2, and we see that the Father is speaking about, this is why it's never easy for the prophets, because the things that the Father sometimes requires of the prophets is not easy. So the Father gets Hosea to have to marry a prostitute. And because why? Because it was going to be a prophetic, something that Hosea was going to have to walk out prophetically in his life. Because at the end of the day, this is exactly what adulterous Israel was going to do. She was going to be whoring with her neighbors and with her allies. And so we read from Hosea chapter 2 verses 5, and it says, for their mother has whored. She who conceived them acted shamelessly, for she said, I go after my lovers, who give me my bread and my water, my wool and my linen, my oil and my drink. Therefore see, I am hedging up your way with thorns, and I shall wall her in, so that she does not find her paths. And she shall pursue her lovers, but not overtake them, and shall seek them, but not find them. Then she shall say, let me go and return to my first husband, for then it was better for me than now. You see, that was the husband of her youth. That is her husband. But she wanted many lovers, and she was fornicating with all these other lovers, so that they would give her harlotry fees, so that she could get what she wanted from her harlotry that she was busy doing. And you see, when we do not put our trust and our faith in our Father, and when we are not submitted and surrendered to Him and allow Him to have His way in our lives, and we put our trust and our faith in these systems that are around us, which are all going to crash at the end of the day, then what do? We also commit whoring. And we also chase after other lovers. So what is it that we put above the Father? Because whatever it is that is more important to you than the Father is a lover in your life. And that can be a child. That can be a husband or a wife. That can be a job. That can be a grandchild. What is it that you put above the Father? Do you love Him more than everything else? Can you lay all of that down for Him? Because if you cannot do that, then that means it's an idolatrous thing in your life. And so he turns around and he says, and she did not acknowledge that I gave her grain and new wine and oil, and increased her silver and her gold, which they prepared for Baal. So you see, then the Father gives us the silver and the gold. He gives us all the wealth, but yet we prepare it for Baal. We give it to the other gods, to the god of, and we use it for the god of the flesh at the end of the day. Therefore, I shall turn back and shall take my grain in its time, and my new wine in its appointed time. And I shall take away my wool and my linen, covering her nakedness. So understand, the day is coming when the carpet is going to be taken out from underneath us. And this great reset is coming. And it's already fast approaching. And when this carpet is taken out from underneath us, then we're truly going to see if we're going to serve Abba Yahuwah wholeheartedly, or what did we put our trust and our faith in, and what gave us pleasure and joy at the end of the day. And now I shall uncover her shame before the eyes of her lovers, and no one shall deliver her from my hand. And I shall cause all her rejoicing, her festivals, her new moons, and her Sabbaths, even her appointed times, to cease. So at the end of the day, you see, these are the believers that put their trust and their faith in the Father, that say, oh, we believe in him. But they keep their own feasts. And they continue to do their Christmas and their Easter. And they continue to do all these other feasts that are an abomination to the Father. Like you'll get Christians, I can't even understand how Christians can even celebrate Halloween. And then we will turn around and say, oh no, we do the feasts, but then we put our Christmas tree still up. Because, you know, it's a traditional thing that we do. And so you'll put Tammuz's Felix there. And it's okay for you to be able to do that, and it's an abomination in the Father's face. But we will put the abomination before the Father, because it's about our custom and our tradition, because this is what we've been taught to do. Do you see what I say? Are we any different? We just have idols in other ways, and we just come up against the Father in our own way. And so we do our own calendars and we go our own way. And so we make our own calendars for ourselves, and we have our own, instead of following the new moon the way that it should. No, we don't even, there's people that don't even follow the moon. And then there are others that just do their own thing, that put their own calendar, don't even look at no new moon. And so all these biblical feasts are then being applied in our own doing. But we don't want to get back to the truth of the word. And lay waste her vines and her fig trees, of which she has said, these are my harlot fees that my lovers have given me, and I shall make them a forest, and the beasts of the field shall eat them. And I shall punish her for the days of the bowls, to which she burnt incense, and adorned herself with her rings and her jewelry, and went after her lovers, and forgot me. So are we those chasing after the lusts of the flesh and the pride of life and the things that this world has got to give us, the deceitfulness of riches? Are we chasing after that, or are we chasing after the Father? Therefore, see, I'm alluring her, and shall lead her into the wilderness, and shall speak to her heart, and give her her vineyards from there, and the valley of Acca as a door of expectation, and there shall respond, as in the days of her youth, and as in the days when she came up from the land of Mitzrayim. And it shall be in that day, declares Yahuwah, that you call me my husband, and no longer call me my Baal, my Lord, my Adonai, Adonai. But we will call him Yahuwah. He will be our husbandman. And so let us continue to read in Isaiah. In Isaiah chapter 52, verses 2. When I came, why was there no man when I called? Why was there no one to answer? Was my hand too short to ransom? Or have I no power to deliver? See, by my rebuke I dry up the sea. I make the rivers a wilderness. Their fish stink, for there is no water, and die of thirst. So, was Abba too weak for them to save them, that they needed to put their trust and their faith in their allies, in the nations around them? Was he too weak for them? Did he have no power to deliver them? Yet he says, by his power, by his rebuke, he dries up the sea. He makes the wilderness he makes the rivers a wilderness and makes them become dry. And so at the end of the day, he's the one who dried up the Red Sea. And I mean, they know about all the stories of him drying up the Red Sea for for them to be able to cross, because in Exodus chapter 14 verse 14 says, I, Abba Yahuwah speaking, I will fight for you. You will hold your peace, your shalom. Meaning that he is the one who's going to fight for you. He is the one who's going to be able to part that Red Sea and then destroy the enemy that would want to pursue you in that Red Sea. So what is it for him to do it again? So what is it for him again to be able to do this for you? Absolutely nothing. But yet they had forgotten. He's the one that makes rivers into a wilderness. He's the one that is going to make the fish stink and that there be no water, and then they will die of thirst. Is he not the one that commands all things? And yet we, in our frailty, in our lack of faith, in our flesh man, will rather not turn to him in a time of need, but we will turn to man, and we will turn to the arm of the flesh to make a plan. And so when it doesn't come through the way that we want, we go to plan B and plan C and plan D, because obviously plan A, which is putting our trust in the Father, did not work. And so do you see why the Father will say, oh, you of little faith? In verse 3, I clothe the heavens with darkness, and I make sackcloth their covering. And so he's the one who clothes the heavens, and he's the one who brings the darkness. He brings the storm. He's the one who covers those heavens, and he brings the darkness, and he brings the storm. And we know that in Revelation chapter 12, we see that in the 6th seal, he's the one that is going to be able to bring the luminaries of the heavens to be able to, there will be a great storm, and there will be, let's just read it in Revelation chapter 6. Revelation chapter 6 verses 12, and I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and I saw a great earthquake came to be, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And the stars of the heavens fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its unripe figs, being shaken by a strong wind. And the heavens departed like a scroll, being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. So who is the one that controls all these things? Who's the one that controls the heavens? Yet at the end of the day, how we of little faith do not trust him when the time comes that we do not know how to trust him. Verse 4, and the Master, Yahuwah, has given me the tongue of taught ones, that I should know to help the weary with the word. He wakes me morning by morning. He wakes my ear to hear as taught ones. Wow. So he is now talking to himself, about himself, where he's saying, the Master Yahuwah has given me, but at the same time, it's also going to be for Messiah Yahushua, who is the one that is going to come and speak a word in season to be able to help the weary, as we have seen that he's come to set the captives free, and he helps the weary, and he helps the needy, and he helps the blind. He opens the eyes of those that are blind, and he opens the ears of those that are deaf. And so this is also speaking of Yahushua, but at the same time, it speaks of Isaiah. He has given me the tongue of a learned one, of a taught one, of a disciple, to know to help those that will be in weary, those that will be in need, those that will need a word at the appointed time. So we should be ready to speak his word in season, out of season, that even though we need to have the word within us, so that at the appointed time we are able to speak a word for the one who's going to need to hear the word. Because the tongue that we have, he will put the words in our mouth. He will anoint our tongues with words that need to be spoken at the appointed time. Because He wakes me up. He wakes me morning by morning. He wakes my ear to hear as a disciple. So morning by morning, my ear must be attentive to hear His voice, to hear what He wants to speak, to hear what He wants to say, because that is a taught one. He wants to be able to have learned ones that will receive instructions for the day. And so Yeshua would take time to go set Himself apart to be able to receive the instructions from the Father, because He says, I say nothing unless I've heard the Father speak to me. I only speak that which the Father tells me to speak. And so at the end of the day, understand, He is the one who speaks the word in season that needs to come. He's the one that will open the ears to hear His instruction at the appointed time. In Exodus chapter 4, verses 12, He turned around and He spoke to Moshe. And He says in Exodus chapter 4, verse 11, and Yahuwah said to him, who has made man's mouth, or who makes dumb, or deaf, or seeing, or blind? Is it not I, Yahuwah? And now go, and I shall be with your mouth, and teach you what to say. And so you see, just like Isaiah, when he was going to have to open his mouth, just like what the Father spoke to Jeremiah, I will put the words in your mouth that you are to speak. Do not worry just because you are young, but I will put the words in your mouth that you are to speak. And now He's saying of Isaiah, He's saying the same thing of Isaiah that He's saying, when you wake up in the morning, I am the one that is going to be able to have you hear the word that I have to give you, and you will be able, your tongue will speak that to the weary of what I say. And you see, if you look at Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 6, and it says, and said I, O Master Yahuwah, see, I do not know how to speak, for I am a youth. And Yahuwah said to me, do not say I am a youth, but go to all whom I send you, and speak whatever I command you. Do not fear their faces, for I am with you to deliver you, says Yahuwah. And so at the end of the day, we are not to fear, because at the time when we are to speak a word that is we needing to speak, that is why even in Matthew chapter 24, Yeshua says, do not worry about what you are to say. When they are having to persecute you and you are going to have to stand before a Sanhedrin council, I will put the words in your mouth that you are to speak. You are not to concern yourself with that, but just make sure you are ready in season and out of season. And so in Psalm 5, what a beautiful psalm. In Psalm 5, from verse 1 to 6, we read, give ear to my words, O Yahuwah. Consider my meditation. Attend to the voice of my cry, my sovereign, my Eloah. For unto you I pray. O Yahuwah, in the morning you hear my voice. I present myself to you in the morning, and I look up. For you are not an owl taking delight in wrong, nor does evil dwell with you. The boasters do not stand before your eyes. You hate all workers of wickedness. So understand, he hates the workers of wickedness that continue to allow His people to be going into destruction, because they're workers of iniquity and they cause others to stumble. He says, you destroy those speaking falsehood. So at the end of the day, the Father doesn't want those speaking falsehood. That's why He wants to clean up our lips, because whatever is falsehood needs to be removed from our mouths. Yahuwah loathes a man of blood and deceit. What a powerful psalm this is. Praise Abba Yahuwah. Isaiah 50 verse 5. The Master Yahuwah has opened my ear, and I was not rebellious, nor did I turn away. So praise Abba Yahuwah. Can we say this of ourselves? Can we say this of ourselves? That we are not rebellious, and that we do not turn our ear away from hearing truth. What do we do when truth comes? We don't want to hear the word of truth and then we turn our ear away. But are we those that when the word comes, we are quick to be able to embrace truth and to be able to speak the truth and to be able to act the truth out in our lives? You see, this is why he's saying, the Master Yahuwah has opened my ear. So he opens your ears to be able to hear truth, because you are crying out to him to say, Father, please, I want to walk in your truth. I want to know your ways of truth. I want to be able to walk in your ways of truth. And this Bible gives us the truth. But what do we do when the truth comes? You see, the Master Yahuwah has opened my ear, and I was not rebellious, nor did I turn away. So how many people, when truth comes, they become rebellious and they turn their ear away? I find that so many times what happens. You'll see people that fall by the wayside. Why? Because when a new level of truth comes in, they're able to receive truth up to a point. And then when something comes along that goes contrary to what they want to do in their flesh, all of a sudden they don't want to listen to you anymore. Then they will fall by the wayside, because then they start to go their own way. And then they close their ears to hear truth. Remember, the Father does not take you past your last disobedience. And this is what you must understand. You're not going to grow from glory to glory if you are in an area of where you have disobedience. That area of disobedience could just cost you everything that you are supposed to walk in the times that goes ahead, because you are not willing to allow him to take you past that place where you are in rebellion. I gave my back. Let's see. Hebrews. Let's go look at Hebrews 5 verses 8. Okay, we'll read it after this. I gave my back to those who struck me, and my cheeks to those who plucked out the beard. I did not hide my face from humiliation and spitting. So we know that this is specifically speaking about Messiah Yahushua. You see, the one before can speak about Yahushua, or it can speak about Isaiah. But this one is absolutely speaking about Yahushua. But it could have been that Isaiah himself could have had this happen to him. But this is a prophetic utterance of what was going to happen to our Messiah. And so if we have a look at Matthew, in Matthew chapter 26, Matthew chapter 26, and we read in verse 39, when Yeshua himself was in anguish. Now remember what it said, that when the truth comes, when he's able to be, when the truth comes our way, and we open our ear to hear truth, we do not turn away from it. And so, Yeshua in the Garden of Gethsemane is going through a very difficult time, as he's having to die to his mind, to his will, to his emotions. This is not a physical struggle yet. The physical one was still going to come. Remember, he died first in the Garden of Gethsemane. That is where he died to his mind, to his will, to his emotions, because that was the inner man going through an inner death before he came to then experience the physical manifestation of that death. So in the Garden of Gethsemane was where he was going through his oil press of that mind, of that will, and that his emotions. And so this is where it says, and going forward a little, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me, yet not as I desire, but as you desire. So you see, this is where we come to when the Father wants us to go through a difficult time, when it's our flesh is fighting against what he wants to what we want. So the flesh is wanting to have its way. The flesh wants to be able to continue in that which is contrary to his word. But there is a wrestle and a fight going on within us, because the flesh man wants to do what it wants, but the spirit man wants us to be set apart and walk in purity and holiness before the Father. And so there's a struggle that happens within us. But we need to surrender, and we need to lay down our lives. And that's why Yeshua says, yet not my will, but your will be done. Yet not as I desire, but as you desire. So that is the place that we need to get to. That we are willing to walk out the Father's desire, even if it costs us in our flesh. Even if it's not quite what we would want to do, but we are willing to walk it out because it's what he wants, and we know that it's what he's requiring of us. Then Matthew chapter 26, verse 67. And we see, then they spat in his face and beat him, and others slapped him. So do we willingly give ourselves to get persecuted, or do we want to fight back and take our stand and have our say? If persecution comes, it should be a blessing. So understand, the persecution is going to come. And so when we have a look at Matthew chapter 27, verses 30, it says, and spitting on him, they took the reed and struck him on the head. So when those that come up against you and persecute you and come up against you, do you try and defend yourself? Do you have to have the last say because you want to defend yourself? Or is that persecution something that you are willing to take a step back and say, well, you know what, if I'm going to be persecuted, let them persecute me. I'm not going to defend myself. He's my vindicator. Yeshua did not defend himself. And that is why we have a look and we read in Hebrews chapter 5, verses 8. Hebrews chapter 5, verses 8, and it says, though being a son, he learned obedience by what he suffered. And having been perfected, he became the causer of everlasting deliverance to those obeying him. So do you see, is this what we are willing to allow him to put us through? That we are willing to be persecuted. So understand, we go through much suffering. We go through much hardships. And we have to suffer as a good steward of the Father, as a good servant of the Father. The servant must be willing to suffer because the master suffered, and so will the servant. And he learned obedience by what he suffered. And sometimes we need to suffer. And we need to go through these trials and these tests for a crime we didn't even commit. People standing up against us, people speaking behind our backs, people coming up against us, people saying hurtful things to us when we didn't do anything wrong because we stood for the truth of his word. And yet at the end of the day, he had to learn obedience by that which he suffered so that he could become an everlasting deliverer. He could become the perfecter. He was being perfected. So we are being perfected through our trials and our tests and our sufferings and our persecutions, so that he could become the causer of everlasting deliverance to all those obeying him. So there are areas in your life that expect you to go through difficulties and hardships so that you become a deliverer for someone else in that same area of that which you have had to go through. Let me tell you something. There's no one that understands the heartache and the pain of a mother that has maybe had to lose a child than one who's already gone through that themselves. And so that thing was painful and it hurt. But the Father uses it for you to be able to bring deliverance to someone else, a word of encouragement and comfort to someone else, because you know what that feels like, because you have been through it yourself. And so then we have a look at 1 Peter 1 Peter chapter 4, from verses 12 to 14, and it says, Beloved ones, do not be surprised at the fiery trials that is coming upon you, to try you, as though some unusual matter has befallen you. But as you share Messiah's sufferings, rejoice, in order that you might rejoice exultingly at the revelation of his esteem. So even though you've got to suffer for a little while, you will rejoice, because you will be able to be one that might rejoice exultingly at the revelation of his esteem. So when he comes in all his glory, you will rejoice. If you are reproached, so if you are persecuted for the name of Messiah, you are blessed, because the spirit of esteem, the spirit of glory and of allure rests upon you. On their part, he is blasphemed, but on your part, he is praised. Praise you, Abba Yahuwah. So understand. So if we have to suffer for his name's sake, how do we handle it? And these are the things that the Father's got to deal with us, because he keeps seeing, he brings tests in our lives to see how do we handle them. And some we do very well. I know myself, in some I do well, and in others I don't do well at all, because it depends on how much it hurts. But the day's got to come that it's going to be water off a duck's back, because at the end of the day, what do we have to squirm about? We should be rejoicing, because we are carrying the spirit of glory of the Father. Isn't that beautiful to know? Praise Abba Yahuwah. And so we continue in Isaiah chapter 5, verses 7. And it says, And the Master Yahuwah helps me, therefore I shall not be humiliated. So I have set my face like a flint, and know that I am not put to shame. So at the end of the day, no matter what you go through, he is the one who's going to help you. He's the one who's going to be there for you. He's the one that shall not allow you to be humiliated. And even though man wants to humiliate you, don't you worry. As you're being humiliated on the one side, he's about to raise you up on the other side. And all man is going to turn around and say, oh, wow, look at what the Father has done in her life or in his life. And yet on the one side, they were humiliating the person. But on the other side, the Father is about to give them, he's about to reward them, and he's about to promote them. So don't worry about the humiliation. He's about to promote you. And so you don't need to worry about the promotion in this world. You need to be promoted in the Father's kingdom. So do not worry about what the enemy will do. So I have set my face like a flint, and I know that I am not put to shame. So we are to be able to run our race and keep our eyes on the finish line, because our Messiah is waiting for us there at the finish line. And we are to run this race, and we are to stay in our lane, is what I keep saying. Stay in your lane. Do not look to the left. Do not look to the right. Hold on to the baton that has been given you and run your race with endurance. He's the one who's cheering you on. He's the one who will make sure that you will finish the race. Ezekiel chapter 3. Ezekiel chapter 3, again, this is another prophet. So we see how the Father speaks to the prophets the same words. That's why if he's spoken it to the one prophet, he will speak it to another prophet. He will speak it to the next prophet. And he will keep speaking these same words to his prophets, because at the end of the day, he's the one who's going to have to make sure that he is the one who's speaking to his prophets and understanding that they may understand these prophetic words. And so here we see in Ezekiel chapter 3 verses 4, he says, And he said to me, Son of man, go to the house of Israel, and you shall speak to them with my word. So understand, Isaiah was speaking, Jeremiah was speaking, and now he's speaking to Ezekiel. So now this is another prophet that he's going to speak to as well, that need to go speak to the children of Israel. And now listen, not too many people of foreign speech and of difficult language whose words you do not understand. If I had rather sent you to them, they would have listened to you. So you see, those on the outside will be no sooner listened to you than those on the inside. Because the ones that supposedly, they pride themselves that they are the children of Yahuwah. When you have to speak a word, they are the ones that don't listen. But yet those that are not of your people, they will be the ones that will be listening. And so it says, but the house of Israel is going to refuse to listen to you. See, just like the father spoke to Moses and said, don't worry, because Moses is not going to listen to you. The Pharaoh is not going to listen to you. For they refuse to listen to me. For all the house of Israel are hard of head and hard of heart. See, I shall make your face as hard as their faces, and your forehead as hard as their foreheads. Like an adamant stone, harder than flint, I shall make your forehead. Do not be afraid of them, nor be discouraged at their looks, for they are a rebellious house. And so whether people listen or whether they don't listen, the prophet is told to speak. Because he's got a mandate, he's got a word, he's been given the word by the Father. So whether people are listening or not listening, the word has got to go out into the atmosphere, because it will judge at the appointed time, because it's a declaration of the mouth that is speaking into the atmosphere. And at the appointed time, the word shall surely come to pass of what has been spoken. So the prophet is not to be concerned in what they think or what they don't think, because the Father is not going to allow the prophet to be put to shame, because the Father is the one who raised up the prophet to speak. The prophet didn't just decide one day, well, this is a good idea, I think I'm going to put a message together and I'm going to start speaking to his people. The prophet is called by the Father, and the Father puts a word in that prophet's mouth, and he gives the prophet a mandate that he is to be able to fulfill for him. And so it says, near is he who declares my rights. Who would contend with me? Let us stand together. Who is my adversary? Let him come near me. So here he's saying, who would bring a charge against Abba Yahuwah? Who? Who is going to be able to bring a charge against him? Are his enemies going to stand against him? Who is the one that is wanting to come against him? What enemies are those that are wanting to come against him and what he has already ordained and that which he has spoken? Who is the one that is going to bring a charge against him? Is man going to sit and point a finger at the Father to say, and you must do, and you said, and you must do? But who are we to be able to think that we can bring a charge against him? And so in verse 9 he says, see, the Master Yahuwah helps me. Who would declare me wrong? See, all of them wear out like a garment. A moth eats them. So you see, all these that are wanting to come up against me, or come up against the children of Yahuwah, or come up against the prophet, in this case, coming up against Isaiah, they will be like clothes that will wear out from the moths having to eat it. It will eventually fade away. So everything else may fade, but the word that the Father is going to speak is going to stand. So the words of the Father is going to stand. Nothing that is going to be spoken against the people that the Father has spoken out of his mouth will not come to pass. It shall surely come to pass for what he has spoken. And their accusations will fall to the ground. And so in Romans 8, from verses 32 to 35, let's go to Romans 8, from verses 32, and it says, truly he who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up on behalf of us all, how shall he not along with him freely give us all else? Who shall bring any charge against Eloh's chosen ones? Is it Eloah who is declaring right? It is Eloah who is declaring right, Who is he who is condemning? It is Messiah who died, and furthermore, it is also raised up, who is also at the right hand of Elohim, who also makes intercession for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Messiah? Shall pressure? Shall distress? Shall, persecution and distress? Persecution, scarcity of food, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? As it has been written, for your sake we are killed all day long, and we reckoned as sheep to the slaughter. But in all this we are more than overcomers through him who loved us. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor messengers, nor principalities, nor powers, nor the present, nor the future, nor height, nor depth, nor any other creature shall be able to separate us from the love of Elohim, which is in Messiah Yahushua, our Master. So provided we are in the Master Yahushua, provided he's the one who's leading and guiding, taking us by the hand, then what do we have to fear? And what is it that we need to be worried about? Scarcities of food, persecution, being thrown in jail, not being able to, getting sick, whatever it is. Do we need to fear? We do not need to fear anything. Verse 10. And then we read, let's just go read Hebrews 11. Hebrews 1 verses 11. Let's go to Hebrews 1. Hebrews 1, 11 to 12, and it says, they shall perish. So let's just read from verse 10. You, Master, did found the earth in the beginning, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They shall perish, but you remain, and they shall all grow old like a garment, and like a mantle you shall fold them up, and they shall be changed. But you are the same, and your years shall not fail. So at the end of the day, that which the Father has spoken shall surely come to pass, and no one is going to change that. And so whether people want to persecute or whether people want to come up against you, his word is his word, and his word is not going to change, and his word will do what he says he will do. And so Isaiah chapter 50 verses 10 and 11, and it says, who among you is fearing Yahuwah, obeying the voice of his servant? That has walked in darkness and has no light. Let him trust in the name of Yahuwah and lean upon his Elohim. So at the end of the day, then he says, see, all you who light a fire, girding on burning arrows, walk in the light of your fire. In the burning arrows you have lit from my hand, you shall have this, you shall die in grief. So at the end of the day, what is the Father saying? If we should fear Yahuwah, we should fear Yahuwah and obey him. And as his servants, we speak by his mouth. If we walk in our own light, in our own flesh ways, and we reject Yahuwah's leading, we become self-reliant and self-sufficient, and this results in our being tormented. When we place confidence in ourselves and our accomplishments, and that which we accomplish out of the works of our hands, instead of on Yahuwah, we will land up heading for a fall. Because why? Pride comes before a fall. And so if we are going to put our trust and our faith in the arm of the flesh, in the things of our flesh, we are going to set ourselves up for a fall, which is what these two verses are telling us. And so we need to be able to fear Yahuwah and obey his voice and lean upon Yahuwah, and not put our trust and our faith in our allies or in our resources or in our flesh ways, because at the end of the day, all of that is going to come to an end. And the only one who's going to be standing is Abba Yahuwah. And so we finish off with reading Ephesians chapter 5. Let's go read Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 5. And we read from verse 6. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these the wrath of Eloah comes upon the sons of disobedience. So you see, let us not be the sons of disobedience. Therefore, do not become partakers with them. For you were once darkness, but now you are light in the Master. Walk as children of light. So we are called to be the children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is well-pleasing to the Messiah. So we are to be able to be those that will be well-pleasing to the Messiah, so that we will be those that will have no fellowship with the fruitless works of darkness, but rather convict them. And so understand, for it is a shame even to speak of what is done by them in secret. And so at the end of the day, we are to have nothing to do with the works of darkness, but rather convict them, speak it forth, because that which is done in darkness shall surely be made to be brought into the light. And so we are children of the light, and we should walk as children of the light, so that the Father can be able to have his way in us, so that we are not the children of the darkness, and so that he may bear fruit in our lives. And we are to be able to be those that bear the fruit of the Spirit. It is all goodness, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth. So we are those that walk in the truth and in the light, and we will expose all the works of darkness. So may Abba Yahuwah bless you all. What a powerful word this Isaiah chapter 50 is. May you all have a blessed day. Shalom, shalom.